Hey class, Mr. Coster here. Welcome to Chapter 5, Section 1. In this section, we are looking at the French and Indian War. The French and Indian War is a war between the French and Great Britain and the British. The Indians of North America typically sided with the French. So it's the French and Indians against Great Britain, and of course the American colonists were part of Great Britain, so they fought with them. And these two powers, France and Great Britain, were the two leading European powers. They both were looking constantly to build an overseas empire in order to increase their wealth and power. France had settled primarily along the St. Lawrence River, right up in here of North America. Britain, as you know, was along the east coast, right in this area right here. Both countries, though, had laid a claim to the Appalachian Mountains. This territory, with the blue and pink stripe right through here, was territory that both countries had kind of laid claim to and felt as though it was their territory. And so they began to fight for that land. This mountain range, this area, is going to be the main point of contention. And the main area in particular is what we call the Ohio Valley, right in here on this other map, right down here. Both areas wanted this because if France got control of that, Great Britain could never move west. Where if Great Britain got control of that land, then France, who was primarily located in New Orleans and up here, would never be able to connect their empire together. And so both sides really badly want this territory. To the war, both sides had different strengths and weaknesses. French strengths going into the war was, first of all, their government was very unified. They were all on the same page. They also went into the war with a number of strategic forts in great strategic locations. They have a well-trained army, and they had a lot of Indian support. A lot of the Indians did not like how the British had treated them. However, the French also had some real disadvantages. New France was widely scattered. Their population was spread out. They weren't in one area. It was very sparsely populated. And because it was such a large area, it's very difficult to defend. The British, on the other hand, have some positives and negatives too. One strength for the British is they have about 15 times the number of people living in the New World than do the French. That's going to be a huge advantage. They do have the support of one Indian tribe, the Iroquois. Iroquois. The Iroquois are one Indian tribe that are going to help out the British. And then thirdly, the British have the world's strongest navy, which will be helpful when it gets to the Great Lakes area and the seas. However, they also have some negatives. There's a real lack of unity among the colonists. The colonists are living as though they are 13 separate entities, and they're not really on board with this war. Also, there's a lack of cooperation with the British government. They're not on the same page. And then, like I just kind of alluded to, most colonists wanted nothing to do with this war. They felt as though this was Great Britain's issue, not America's issue. They didn't want to be a part of it. So as the war continued, of course, have some pros and cons. They have some strengths and weaknesses. And I mentioned earlier that the issue at hand is going to be control of the Ohio Valley. Right in this area right here, you can see a close-up of some of the key forts in this map. Fort Duquesne, Fort Pitt are going to be a real stronghold. As you can imagine, waterways, the Allegheny, Monongahela, and Ohio rivers is a key hub for transportation, for movement of troops, for trade reasons. And so the French are going to put a fort there. It's going to be a real key location for them. By the way, this is in present-day Pittsburgh. This picture up here in the top left-hand corner kind of shows where Pittsburgh is located with those three rivers and how they all converge onto one. Now, somebody came on the scene for the first time, and that's George Washington, pictured in the bottom left. In 1754, the colony of Virginia is going to hire him to go west and defend Virginia's holdings, defend her territories against a potential French takeover or trying to take some of that Virginia land. So George Washington going to get some valuable experience. However, he doesn't have a whole lot of success early on. He's called to go on and attack Fort Duquesne. You see it spelled there, Duquesne. However, by the time he got there, the French were already there, forced him back, and he was forced to retreat. The French did, though, allow George Washington and his men to surrender and retreat and go back. So early on in this war, the French have the upper hand. The French have a lot of success in this battle for the Ohio Valley, this key location. After a while, the British had kind of a change of direction come 1756, and they appointed a new man in charge, a man named William Pitt. He becomes the new Minister of Defense, and he brings with him a new energy and enthusiasm for this war, and he incites a lot of aggressive action from his troops. He appoints a lot of new young generals, gets them better equipment, and they are ready to fight. They're going to travel on, be real aggressive, and take over Fort Duquesne, pictured in the bottom left. See the rivers there converging again. And they're going to rename it Fort Pitt in honor of William Pitt, and of course later it would become Pittsburgh. So this is a key battle, key turning point, and momentum continues for the British as they begin to push into the final battle, and that is the Battle of Quebec. Up in Canada, the Battle of Quebec is where the final war is going to be fought in this. The two leaders of this final battle are the Marquis de Montcalm, pictured right here, and then we have James Wolfe, pictured here, of Great Britain. These two men are going to lead their respective armies into this final battle. And Wolfe and the British have been firing from the water side up at the fort. You can see pictured here, up at the fort, going along. Notice in this map here, here's the fort right there. They've been blasting them day in, day out, and they just can't quite get control. However, finally, a massive attack by the British forces the French to surrender. And I'll have you note that both Montcalm and Wolfe are going to get killed in Quebec. And the French will finally surrender, and Great Britain is going to win the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, and they will get control of this region going forward. And so we have very little French influence later on in North America because of this battle and the British winning. So what are the results? The results are primarily land. The treaty that ends this war is called the Peace of Paris. In 1763 ends this war. And in this concession, France gives up all of this land pictured right here. All this territory is given to Great Britain. So all land east of the Mississippi River is given to Great Britain. So this whole yellow area is Great Britain. This is Great Britain, and now this new territory is also Great Britain. France does have this territory over here to the side. They still have that land. So Britain regains control of Canada, and also during this, Spain, point out, they do have Florida in this area here. So a very significant land grab here for Great Britain, and they're going to, of course, lead the way in North American settlement and power moving forward as a result of this war over France.